Rick Osfeld out in the Carey Institute, what he discovered is that risk tends to be higher in these fragmented areas. So you look at an area like Mattapoisett, where you're kind of taking this forest here, chopping up into these smaller communities. And down around these kind of areas, that's where your risk is the highest, not in areas like this. And they kind of were like, why? So what's changing? What's changing as you kind of cut down these forests? Is that you get more of these competent host reservoirs. So you get more things like more white-footed mice, more chipmunks, more shrews, more squirrels, more robins, and you get fewer of the foxes and bobcats, things that predate on these animals. They tend to be the first things to go when you destroy that forest habitat. So in the absence of the predators, these populations kind of boom, and then you also have things like deer, which they may not be transmitting this disease and making the ticks sick, but they're an important reproductive host for the tick. So you get tick buffet, and then the things that feed on those things tend to go away. And he found that this pattern is true throughout all of these tick habitats. So again, going back to the deer thing, so deer are an important reproductive host. The adult stage tick, the tick that's out right now, is looking for a large mammal. We don't know why it likes to feed on large mammals, but it just tends to prefer it. Why does my niece like mac and cheese? I don't know. She just likes it. But if I were to pull away the mac and cheese, she's going to eat cereal and pizza and all these other things. And that's the truth with the black-legged tick. They feed on 125 different hosts. So in an area like Barnstable County, you don't have too many deer, but you have a boatload of ticks there. And we don't know what they're feeding on. Why is it that they can have higher numbers of deer ticks down there than some other place in Plymouth County when there's more deer in that area? We don't know. Maybe they're feeding on coyotes. Maybe they're feeding on other hosts in the absence of these deer. But the deer numbers don't perfectly correlate with the population of ticks. We just know that they like deer to feed on when they're adults. Nevertheless, people try removing deer. They say, people notice this thing. They're like, well, there are fewer deer, there were fewer deer ticks, and the thing is called a deer tick. So what if we kill the deer, can we reduce the ticks? And they tried doing that in many different locations, and it worked on islands and peninsulas, but it's never worked in mainland areas. And they were like, why is this? Why can we do it if we just kill the deer on an island, but it's not working when you try it in an area like maybe like Norwell or Hingham or something like that. If we can do it in Hull, maybe why can't we do it in Hingham? What they found is that you need to reduce the deer to practically extinction in that area and prevent immigration of those deer into that area in order to see any effect. So like I said, there wasn't a one-to-one correlation with the deer. You didn't pull out a deer and, if you pulled out 10% of the deer, you didn't see 10% reduction in ticks. You saw pulling out 10% of the deer, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, no reduction in the ticks until you hit this critical threshold that ended up being somewhere around 10 deer per square mile. And then you saw this follow-up reduction in the number of ticks. So we don't know what's going on, why you need to bring the deer down to that low level to get that reduction. We're not sure, but we did see is that when you pulled more deer out, there were more ticks on fewer deer. So it could be one of those things, you need to pull them down to a level where the ticks just simply can't find the deer, or the load of ticks is too high on the deer. We don't know.
How does a tick get on a deer in the first place? I mean, they're just these little things.
They have this behavior called questing, where they'll climb up to the top of a stick. And adult stage ticks, the ticks that are out right now, can climb up about 2.5 feet. And so you think like waist height down, they will climb up that high. And then they'll just hang out waiting for the deer to pass by.
They just jump on the...
They don't even jump. And I'll explain that
in
a bit. But overall, this is my favorite joke, by the way. So overall, targeting deer not too effective, not great bang for your buck. So how do ticks spread germs, right? So let's talk all about the competent host reservoirs. How do they get germs into us? Well, in general, we know that these germs take hours to transmit. Have anyone heard of the 24-hour rule? If a tick is attached for 24 hours, less than 24 hours, you're safe. Well, this isn't like Cinderella where the clock strikes midnight, and before midnight you're fine, and then after midnight you're safe. That 24-hour rule is not hard and fast, and I have seen in studies ticks transmit disease in less than 24 hours. No, it just seems to be one of those things where the risk just increases more and more as time goes by. So you want to think of it like that, not like before 24 you're safe, after 24 you have the disease. Even after 24 you're not guaranteed to get it. Even after 36 hours you're not guaranteed to get it. It's just this increasing risk over time. But the ticks, the germs that the ticks transmit rely on long-term feeding. Almost none of the diseases are very quickly to transmit. With mosquito-borne diseases, mosquitoes feed for a very short period of time. Diseases transmit very quick in mosquitoes. With ticks, they generally transmit very, very slowly. But good for the diseases is that the ticks want to feed for about 4 to 7 days. They want to stay attached to our bodies for a really long time. So it starts with their equipment. So you've got, this is a tick's mouth. This is a kind of shooting at the side. And this is a lot of times what the people call the head of the tick, which is not really the head, it's mouth. It has these protruding mouth parts. You've got these fat finger-like organs called palps. These are sensing organs. You've got these organs here, these are called chelicerae, and you can kind of think of these as like cutting, hooking, tearing organs. So they make an incision into your skin. So the palps feel around for a good spot. The chelicerae move in and they make a little incision, but they're barbed on the sides of them. And so they'll hook into your skin. So as they're cutting, they're also hooking and pulling. So you've got this cut, hook, pull kind of thing. Like almost like doing the breaststroke. Doing this thing into your... And that's what drives the actual feeding tube, what we call the hypostome. This spiky straw. That's what drives that into your body. And this is what the tick actually uses to inject you with spit and feed. And if you look, that's not a friendly looking mouth part. That's not a, that's covered in these barbs that hook into your skin. This tick really wants to stay attached. And so what happens next, as if that wasn't enough? Well, it's going to spit into your body. And I like to think of this as the perfect cocktail. So first thing it's going to do is secrete cement. And that cement's going to fill in all those gaps that maybe seal up that area around that hypostome. So as if those hooks weren't enough, you've got cement coating any areas that the barbs don't hook into. And then ticks, they don't feed like mosquitoes, and they're not like a syringe where it's looking for a vein. They actually want to create under your skin what we call a feeding lesion. And it's going to be this pool, a wound underneath your skin, where it's going to cause actual tissue damage. And so they don't want that to clot, so they've got anticoagulants that they're going to secrete into that site of that wound that's going to prevent clotting. Vasodilators to promote blood flow to that wound so that they have a constant supply of this blood coming to them. Pain reducers, because they don't want you to feel a thing. And then immunosuppressant agents to reduce detection by our immune system. So a lot of times people will say, like, they're a little bit embarrassed that a tick could be on their body for like 2 to 3 days because they're like, I shower, I do all these things. How can this tick stay on their body? I'm like, that's a good tick. That's a successful tick. These ticks have been doing this for millions of years, knocking out our immune systems, preventing detection. It's like when a thief breaks into your house. If you catch that thief, that's a bad thief. But if you come home and all of a sudden your TV's gone, well, that's a thief that did its job. And the tick is trying to do that except with blood on our bodies. They want to get on your body, feed for 4 to 7 days, leave, and have you never known that they were there. So how does disease happen? Well, the tick doesn't just spit once, but it will spit and suck and spit and suck and spit and suck. And if you don't like when someone does that to your drink, you really don't want a tick doing that to your body. So that's how you get cooties. So Lyme disease, what's it caused by? Not too many coronas, or I certainly would have gotten it by now, especially back in my college days. I prefer stouts a little bit more now that I've gotten a little bit older, but I drank a lot of coronas in college. It's caused by a spirochete bacteria, and there's still not a lot known about this bacteria. We're still learning a lot about it. So we know certain things, but then now we're coming up with all these exceptions. And so when people come up and they tell me, they say, well, I had Lyme disease, but my doctor said I didn't, and the other doctor said I did, and then I was on this thing and then that thing, and I still feel like I haven't. We're still learning. Back when Lyme was discovered, we thought the book was closed on this, and now there's a whole slew of new research coming out since the early 2000s that is really kind of reopening this book, and we're revisiting a lot of these different things. And even that stuff is still really highly contentious and highly debated. We still don't know. What we do know is that you can't get it if you don't get bit by a tick, though. That's the one thing we know. But there are 10 pathogens in total transmitted by 3 different species of ticks that we have here in Massachusetts. So in the green here, you've got the deer tick or black-legged tick, you've got Lyme disease, babesiosis, anaplasmosis, Poisson virus, and relapsing fever. Babesiosis, that's kind of a little bit like malaria. You can think of it, it's going to be a protozoan that's going to attack your red blood cells. And depending on your age, depending on how strong and robust your immune system is, it can actually be fatal if you don't catch it. And the scary thing, I think, with babesiosis is that unlike Lyme disease and maybe anaplasmosis, maybe relapsing fever, it's treated differently. So if this isn't recognized, it can go unnoticed until it's almost too late and might land you in the hospital before it gets discovered. So, and then you've got this thing, Poisson virus, very rare, but there's no cure, no vaccine for this. In about 10% of the cases it's fatal. And then relapsing fever is a really rare one. And this one scares me the most because as little as we know about Lyme disease, we know even less about relapsing fever. And so that one, I never want to get that one. I never want to walk out of a doctor's office and find out I won the lottery with tick-borne diseases. But then you got the dog tick. So this is what we used to call the wood tick, or now we're calling it the American dog tick, because we like to name parasites after what they feed off, and ticks don't feed on wood, so we don't call them wood ticks anymore. But you've got 2 diseases here, Rocky Mountain spotted fever and tularemia. Pretty rare diseases, but still I like to bring this up because sometimes people will say, well, the little ones are dangerous and the big ones are safe, but the big ones are not completely safe. There's still risk with tick-borne disease when it comes to American dog ticks. And you've got this new one here, the Lone Star tick. And this is a tick that used to be pretty much further south. We used to, even though it's called Lone Star tick, it's not exclusively in Texas. We used to find this really the southern part of the United States, the southeastern part. So you're looking at places like Georgia, Virginia, West Virginia, that kind of thing. But it's really made its way up, and now we find it as far as the south of Maine. And this transmits Rocky Mountain spotted fever and tularemia, but also this thing called starry ehrlichiosis and alpha-gal allergy. So this one is, if I haven't scared you enough with these diseases, I'm going to really try with this one, because this one scares a lot of people. So what is alpha-gal? Well, it's not a feminist superhero. It's actually the allergy to red meat. That's what you might hear of it reported in the papers. But a better word for it would be mammalian product allergy, because it's going to affect anything, even the things that we don't consider red meat, like gelatin, so gummy bears, those would be off the table. Or even things like pork products, so bacon, that would be off the table as well. Venison, it's really anything that would pretty essentially come from a mammal. So it might even affect things like milk and cheese. So a world without burgers, gummy bears, milk and cheese, I don't know, that's pretty awful. Just like eating like tuna fish and Swedish fish. And you couldn't even eat M&Ms. I just found out that M&Ms, that candy-coated shell, has gelatin in it. So that could even make you allergic. And unlike other allergies, this doesn't hit you right away. It waits. It waits for about 6 to 8 hours for that food to get into your digestive tract, and then you might wake up with hives or anaphylaxis. So if you had a burger this time of night, you would wake up maybe in the middle of the night with anaphylaxis. That's really scary. And it's really hard to trace because you wake up and you got hives, it's like, was it the sheets? Was it something else? Was it the ice cream I ate before bed? I don't know. And you're tracing it all the way back to that like McDonald's burger you had at like 6 o'clock. It's tough to trace. Really scary, but it only comes from this Lone Star tick. Very shocking. So first Lone Star, has anyone heard about the longhorn tick? So we have first Lone Star, and then we have longhorn. And I swear we have nothing against Texas. That's just kind of the way it all panned out. This tick here was first discovered in Hunterdon County, New Jersey back in 2017. But we think this tick has existed for a long time before that and was just misidentified, maybe as far back as 2012. We think it was introduced 3 times into the United States based on mitochondrial DNA. What about this tick? So it's cold tolerant and it can reproduce asexually, so it doesn't need a male to reproduce. I like to call these strong, independent women that don't need no man. But what's the deal? So it's disease-free. We haven't known, a lot of times you'll see in papers, has been known to transmit SFTS back in its native range, we don't know what